first question I want to ask all of the panelists is, what do you think was the last really important design movement, and why was it important? Let me start with you, Andreas.
Well, for me personally, it is very difficult to answer this question, because I believe that there is a long-running design movement for many decades, really, which for me is very important, and that is the minimalism. And then for me personally, the Memphis movement was and is very important, because through the Memphis movement, I personally learned there to really value the sculptural quality of a design object.
And I imagine that minimalism is still informing you as a company. I mean, we can see some of your
Yes.
products here. Do you find that an unusual situation that you're still using a language which is pretty old, really, isn't it? I mean, minimalism has been going, what, I don't know, 60, 70, 80 years even?
Well, I think it has to do something also with our brand DNA, maybe. You know, and this brand DNA has a lot to do with precision, with proportional, well-proportioned design, and also, as we can see, kind of sculptural value. And yes, this DNA has developed together with Dieter and Michael Sieger, has been developed over the last 25 years.
So in a way, are you saying that you know, that if you were to pick up a design history book from, you know, the end of the last century, the word design icon would occur very frequently, design classic, timeless design. Is that the kind of type of design that you still think has a relevance to you and to consumers?
I think it has. It has. Certainly, we have always to differentiate between, you know, a product which a consumer buys to use for the next 20, 25 years. And therefore, the, let's say, aesthetical value and the sustainability of the aesthetical value, I think, is very, very important today. So classic, icon, timelessness are certain features which we would like to follow. And the, let's say, more contemporary interior design, certainly, will be something which might regularly change. You know, the wallpaper, the textiles, and so on. These are things which probably wouldn't last for 20, 25 years. And this is the challenge for us as a manufacturer, as well as certainly as the designer, is to create timeless pieces, but which always can be set into contemporary environments by the interior designer and the architect.
That's an interesting use of the word sustainability, the sustainability of aesthetics.
Yes.
People would talk about sustainability, they're usually talking about sustainability of resources or the planet or of human beings, but to talk about making an aesthetic last a long time, that's quite an interesting take on that word. Anyway, I'll move on to Michael now. The same question to you, Michael. What was the last really important design aesthetic in your eyes?
Yeah, I think for me it is also the Memphis period, because that was also the time for me being the age of, I don't know, something between 14, 16 years old, so it was actually really the first big design trend I experienced myself. But on the other side, I think it was probably the most radical break within the last 30 years of, or 50 years of design history. It turned out to be a different design understanding, so that not every product really has to be very functional. And I think Memphis really added the emotional aspect into design, and so I think Memphis made many other developments like the postmodernism, neo-baroque, and other things which came later, made it possible to happen. Otherwise, it could be difficult.
So Memphis is almost sort of 30 years old now. Are you saying that all that's happened in design since then can be seen as children of Memphis in a way? Do you still think we're living in the wake of Memphis?
Okay, it's always difficult if Memphis wouldn't have happened, to say, okay, what would have happened instead of Memphis and the development. But yeah, I think that Memphis and Ettore Sottsa's, for me, is probably the most important designer of the last decade. I mean, it's a pity that he was not so successful in commercial understanding, or if you go out on the street, ask somebody, do you know Ettore Sottsass, they probably never have heard about him. Everybody knows Philip Stark, but I think the quality of what Sottsass and Memphis did for their overall design development, yes, it was much more important.
Can you define what changed? If a designer was working before Memphis, what would have been the philosophy? And after Memphis, what is the difference between the pre-Memphis and the post-Memphis era, which we are arguing we're still in?
Okay, I didn't experience the time before myself because I was too young. From my understanding, yes, it was much about functionality, rationalism, and as I said, now or after Memphis, there are other important aspects like poetic things. I think maybe, and that's why I sent a picture of the brown design, and as well from an Apple product, iPad or iPhone. I think right now we experience that we probably start to be in a decade of more rationalism and functional aspects again, and so that might be the reason that the design of brown really fixed to the recent time now.
It's interesting, the influence of Dieter Rams on Apple products, and there's a website where they compare brown products and Apple products, and the detailing is remarkably similar. That's an interesting point to leave you there, Michael, on that you think rationalism might come back. But let's move on to you, Matteo. The same question, what to you was the last really important design movement and why?
I think the question is, what do you call a real movement? Does it really need an ideology? Does it have to influence the whole market? And I think the two movements that were mentioned so far were very different kinds of movements. One was minimalism, like the main leitmotif of all design history so far, because it was about standardization, adapting things to industrial production, etc. So if you call minimalism a movement, then design itself as a discipline is a movement among other movements, which might be decorative arts, crafts, etc. And the other thing, Memphis was a very defined movement that really touched one section of the whole design scene of the market, and then it spread out. But it's both of the ideas, Memphis and minimalism, had a certain ideology behind. That means that it was more than a trend or a brand, but both of them were linking their ideas to social development, to certain reflections in society. For example, Memphis very strongly reflected on media theory and what happens in a time where people are used to see objects as mediums that communicate, and suddenly the surface of an object got a completely new importance, and the surface was decorated with laminates that had certain motifs on them, which was not thinkable before Memphis, because the surface had to be a part of the object and could not be an applied surface. So, to me, if I'm asked what is the last real movement that has a certain relevance to a broader aspect of our discourse, I would say Druckdesign. But still, I think the question that is maybe more interesting is what can be a movement today? I mean, can we still expect movements of such an impact like Memphis today, or is it just unrealistic because we are used so much to think in brands or in trends? Another movement, very quickly, that comes to my mind, which I think can be seen like a movement which has survived these cycles of the last years, was this idea of supernormal by Jasper Morrison, because it somehow mixed this idea of minimalism with these experiments from Memphis, where Morrison said that things can be normal but don't have to be banal, and this idea was very influential because it somehow merged these two very opposite streams in design history, which was the search for the extraordinary and the search for functionality and normal objects. And I think this idea of Jasper was very smart and still has a very big relevance today, and we see it because it reappears. I mean, after the crisis, this reflection about what are normal, useful things which are yet not banal and not boring is still there.